I will try to introduce you the area of signals and systems. In fact, the area is quite vast, and I can only briefly touch upon some of the important concepts. The lecture that I am going to arrange will be in the following manner. First, I will cover the introduction, where I will try to tell you about some of the applications of this particular area, right. Then I will try to introduce the concepts or some preliminary concepts, where basically I will introduce what are signals, what class of signals are of our interest, and give you some examples of typical signals that we encounter. And I will also tell you what are systems, how are systems defined, maybe in terms of the maps which map one signal to the other signal, and tell you some of the attributes of the signals of systems of our interest. After this basic preliminary, I will try to tell you how we characterize system, what are the various properties of the systems that are of our interest, basically various attributes of the system. So I will then go into the topic called system attributes, and then in particular I will focus on a specific class of systems known as linear time invariant systems and dwell on that further, and in detail I will try to only cover that particular class of systems, namely LTI systems or linear time invariant systems. See, there are various applications of this particular area called signals and systems. We would like to have some kind of mathematical characterization of systems. Let us see what are the applications, where exactly the whole thing can be used. I want to automate a particular plant, for instance. Then I would like to have a mathematical modeling of the plant. Any plant you take, there will be certain inputs to the plant and there will be certain outputs to the plant. Inputs can be in terms of say temperature somewhere or pressure somewhere or some other parameter, and output also can be in terms of say temperature also, because if you are trying to control the temperature, the temperature can also be an output of the system. Another output of the system can be say viscosity, that if I am interested in viscosity, or there can be, so there is a system which has certain inputs and certain outputs, and I would like to develop a mathematical model for the system. Basically that means I would like to characterize the relationship between input and output, and if I have a mathematical characterization of the system, then I can always transfer this in terms of a computer program. Advantage of that is, see, if I want to see the system performance under various conditions, there are two ways in which it can be done. Number one is I have a physical model of the system, and then I feed different kinds of inputs and see what kind of response my system is giving. But then this is a very tidy process. I mean, I have to have a physical system, maybe a miniaturized physical system, and then it may not be possible for to feed certain kinds of inputs. So if I have a mathematical characterization of the system, then I can always transfer this in terms of a computer program, where I can in a software, via software, try to give various inputs to the system and see how the system is performing, what kind of response the system is giving. So the computer modeling, that is important thing that we can achieve by modeling the system, by mathematical modeling the system. The other application, there are various other applications. One more application I will take, say for instance speech production mechanism. If you see speech production mechanism, what actually happens is we have glottal excitation. That glottal excitation passes through this vocal tract. Depending on the position of your teeth, tongue, velum, a particular kind of sound comes out. So the way we write using alphabets, when we speak, okay, we can generate any kind of sound by using different phonemes units, which you can consider as alphabets for spoken words. So by concatenating various phonemes, I can generate anything. So the point is, here the issue is that of modeling the vocal tract. the vocal tract parameter. So if I can develop the mathematical model for this vocal tract for various kinds of sound unit, I can generate those various kinds of sound units, and which when concatenated together can produce different words, and words concatenated together can form different sentences. On the other hand, I can also perform the inverse operation, that is, given a particular segment of sentence, I can perform the inverse operation. I can break down that in terms of words, analyze each and every word. For each and every word, what are the various basic sound units which a particular word is comprised of, and if I can analyze that in through the dictionary, looking at the system which produces that particular sound, I can actually try to recognize say sound, whatever is being spoken. So these are some of the applications of this area, right, to tell you briefly. Now let us discuss something very basics. How a signal, what kind of signals are of our interest, right? We encounter two types of signals. One class of signals is known as continuous time signals. Okay. Basically, when I say continuous time signals, I would mean the following. The continuous time signals would be mappings from real line to the field of complex numbers. In so many applications, I would like certain properties also to be attached with this class of signals. Say for instance, I may be interested in signals which have finite energy. Okay, that is, I can say that I am interested in this class of signals. That is, I consider all mappings from R to C which have finite energy. This class of signals, as you know, is denoted as L to R, finite energy signal class, and this is what I am going to call continuous time signals, because the notion that we attach with the variable, the real variable t, is time. So for every t, I assign a real or complex number f of t. Okay. The other class of signals that are of our interest are discrete time signals. When I say discrete time signals, I actually mean mappings from the set of integers to complex numbers. That is, for every n, I assign a real or a complex number x of n. And here also sometimes I would also like to have certain properties attached to these signal classes. For instance, I can say I am interested in only those class of signals which have finite energy, and finite energy concept here translates to, and as you know, this class we can say L to Z. So these are two classes, two signal classes that are of our interest: the continuous time signal class, the discrete time signal class. So depending, whatever may be the class of signals I am considering, I am going to call that, I am going to denote that as S. So S is my signal class. Either it can be a continuous time signal or it can be a discrete time signal with some property P, right. Now what is a system then? A system then is a mapping from signal space to signal space. A system takes a signal and maps it to another signal. So if I say I am interested in a continuous time system, that means I consider a continuous time signal and map it to another continuous time signal. And if I am interested in discrete time systems, I take a discrete time signal, I map it to another discrete time signals. So that is, a system is basically a mapping from signal space to signal space. So it takes a signal S and it maps to another signal R of S. Let us consider some simple, very elementary examples of systems. For instance, I have a, let us say I have a signal xt and I map it to some Rx, which when I evaluate at t, I say this is nothing but say x of minus t. Basically this is nothing but the reflection about y axis. If I have a signal of this nature, suppose I have a signal of this nature, then after passing through a system like this, okay, it will become its mirror image. if this is my x of t, this is x, this is t, x of minus t will look like this, a mirror image copy of the original signal x of t. Another class of signals, so this is a reflection system. Another class of system that of let us see is of our interest is suppose delay system, a delay system. As name suggests, it takes a signal and it delays by a certain amount. Okay. So suppose I say I am having a system which delays by amount t0. So when this system operates on a signal x, it produces another signal RT0x, which when I evaluate at t is nothing but x of t minus t0. So suppose I have this as my xt, and if I pass it through a delay system, then what will happen is this response is going to come after t0. That is, it will start from here and it will, depending on whatever is the support of this, let us say this is capital T, then this is t0 and this will be t0 plus capital T. This is a delay system, very elementary system, a reflection system, then a delay system. We could also consider another class of another simple system, say scaling system. A scaling system basically either stretches the signal or compresses the signal. So suppose in terms of mappings, you can consider it like this. Suppose RA is the system which when operates on x, okay, produces another signal RAX, which if I want to evaluate at a particular time t, this is nothing but x of at. So depending on whether a is greater than 1 or a is less than 1, signal either will get compressed or will compressed or expanded. That is what it is. Okay. So these are some elementary system examples that I have given, right. Okay, now let us review. I have defined signals. So signals are basically mappings from if I am considering continuous time signals, then they are mapping from the real line to the field of complex numbers, and if I am considering discrete time signals, then they are mappings from the set of integers to the field of complex numbers. Okay, and a system is basically a mapping from signal space to signal space. So we have also discussed some typical examples of systems, the reflection systems, the delay system, and the scaling system. Now let us look at the various attributes of the system that are of interest to us. Okay. See, one of the attribute that of interest to us is memory, whether the system has memory or system is without memory. So I am just writing M or WM, that is memory or without memory, which means in order to compute the response of this system at time t, I require the value of the input only at that instant t. That is, the output does not depend on the input value at any other instance other than t. So I can say it, I can put it this way, that the response of the system is a function of only x of t, the value of x at t. For instance, let me give you one example of this. Suppose I say yt is equal to sine of xt. So what does the system do? X of t is the input to the system, is the value of the input at instant t. The system computes the sine of that and produces an output which we call y of t. Okay. The yt, in order to compute yt, I do not require value of x at any other instant other than t. So the system has no memory. Another example of this memoryless system I can say is, suppose yt is equal to xt square, for instance. It takes the present value of the input, squares it and produces an output. Okay. So these are examples of system without memory. So what is a system with memory? Obviously, suppose I have a yt which is even x of t minus 1, that means xt delayed by an amount 1. So in order to compute, say if I want to compute y at t, I have to know the value of x at t minus 1. So this value has to be stored. So the system has memory. System requires input value at other than t. Okay. So these are examples of system with memory, without memory. So this is one of the system attribute that is of our interest. The another attribute, let us say, is what is known as causality. When do we say a system is causal? Basically, causal means non-anticipatory. That means system does not anticipate the input, the future values of the input. It only bases its output on the present and the past values of the input. Okay. So causality basically is that if mathematically if I want to put the causality, right, I will say the following thing. Suppose I take x1t and x2t, they are two inputs, any two inputs, but they satisfy the condition that x1t is equal to x2t for all time t less than a specific time t0. Suppose it is like this. Suppose x1t and x2t, they are same up to some time t0. Then the corresponding responses of the system also should be same up to that time t0. So if I denote y1t as the response of the system x1t and y2t as the response of the system x2t, I can say that y2t should be equal to y1t for all t less than equal to t0. So causality means, this is the mathematical condition for causality, but causality means the system is non-anticipatory. If the system was depending on the future value of the input, then the two responses up to this time may not be same, because these inputs purposefully I will take them to be different for beyond t0. I can always make y2t, y1t different. Point is, non-anticipatory system, causality are the same thing. Okay. So in general we come across systems which are causal system. Okay. And what is non-causality? Non-causality means the system is anticipatory, that means the response depends on the input value which may be future value. For instance, suppose I say I take y of, say, let me consider an example of discrete time system. Y of n, suppose, is the following. So what does y of the system does? System at a particular instant n takes the present, that value at x of n, it takes one future value at n plus 1, it takes one previous value at n minus 1 and takes the average of the 3 and produces that as the output. So in order to compute y at instant n, I require the input value at instant which is future to n, future to the instant n, and that is why the system is an anticipatory system. This kind of system generally, okay, are used when you have the stored data available to you. For instance, I have a recording which I want to clean, then the whole data is already available to me and I can perform the processing. T equal to 0 or n equal to 0 is only a frame of reference that I am fixing. With reference to that, this is future and this is past and this is present. When I am considering the stored data, the everything is at my disposal and I can certainly perform this operation. Okay. So causality. So system is causal if it is non-anticipatory, otherwise system is called non-causal. System is non-causal. Another attribute of the system that is of our interest is stability. A system is called stable if bounded input produces a bounded response. Okay. So let me, when I say bounded input, the definition of bounded input is suppose xt is the input, then I say it is called bounded if xt can be made less than m for all values of t. That means for every t, the values of xt can be bounded by an m, a number m which is finite, and this should happen for every t. And secondly, this m should be independent of t. Okay, so xt is called bounded if I can find an m independent of t such that all values of x of t can be bounded by this number m. Okay, so when I say system is stable, that means bounded input if every bounded input, if every bounded input produces bounded response, that is if mod xt or magnitude is bounded by m for all t, this should imply that the corresponding response can be also bounded by some m0 for all t, where y is, I am denoting the response of the system to the input xt. Okay, that is if bounded input produces a bounded response, system is called a stable system or a BO stable system. Okay, let us consider some examples of say unstable systems. Okay, suppose I consider integrator. I integrate x tau d tau from minus infinity to t, and I produce, this is how suppose system is producing the output. It takes xt as the input, integrates it from minus infinity to t, whatever is the area under xt till that time, that is the response of the system. Is the system stable? That is the question. This system is unstable because I can, let me see a particular input, okay, which is a bounded input, but its response cannot be bounded, and it is a very simple input, the unit step input ut. Unit step input ut is defined as this equal to 1 for all t greater than equal to 0 and 0 otherwise. So if I want to plot ut, it is an input like this. And 0 is here. Okay. So if I feed such an input to this system, okay, the output will be what? The system takes the area under xt up to time t and produces the response. If I feed this up to time t, the area is nothing but t into height 1. So this will be nothing but t for all t greater than equal to 0. But then t cannot be bounded by any m which is independent of t, I cannot bound t. So obviously this system is an unstable system, okay, in this definition, with this definition. So we have so far discussed 3 attributes. So far we have discussed 3 attributes of the system. One is memory, without memory, causality, non-causality, stability, instability. Okay. Now let us see the 4th attribute that is of interest to us, and that is invertibility or non-invertibility. As I told you earlier, that system is a mapping from signal space to signal space. It takes a signal, maps it to another signal R of s. So when does any map invertible? I mean, if the distinct inputs, if they are producing distinct responses, then I will say system is invertible. I mean, mathematically speaking, I can say the following thing, that if R of S1 is equal to R of S2, this should be possible if and only if S1 equal to S2. If the responses are same, okay, then they should be coming from same input. Otherwise, the distinct inputs are not producing distinct response and system is not going to be an invertible system. Invertible system means the following: mathematically or from system point of view, I will say that suppose R is a system, X is the input to this system, Y is the output of this system, okay, then I should be able to design a system here such that I get the output same as the input X, and that system is what I am going to call inverse of this system R. So in other words, I can say that if given an R, I can produce another system so that I can get my X back for every possible X, then I say that my system is an invertible system, okay, which mathematical condition for that is that distinct inputs, if they result in distinct responses, then system is an invertible system, okay. Let us take some examples of such systems which are invertible and which are non-invertible. Suppose I say that Yt is sine of xt. That is, response of the system to the input xt is Yt, and that is given by this equation sine of xt. Point is, this system whether it is invertible or not. Obviously this system is not invertible because sine is modulo 2 pi, it will give you the same number. You take xt plus any 2k pi, I am going to get same value. So distinct inputs, say for instance, I mean one counter example would suffice, that if I take xt as one input and I take x2t which is xt plus 2 pi, when I apply to this system, they are going to produce the same response. So naturally this system is not an invertible system. On the other hand, if I consider the system that I had talked about just previously, that is the integrator system, that is suppose Yt is equal to integral minus infinity to t x tau d tau, immediately I can see that if I differentiate this, I will get my xt back. So if I have one system which is an integrator system, if I pass through differentiator, I will get my xt back without any problem. So this is an example of an invertible system, okay. There are various applications in which we would like system to be invertible. For instance, when I say that the vocal tract can be modeled as a system to which input is the glottal excitation. Now if I want to get hold of that glottal excitation part, I have to produce another system which is an inverse of this vocal tract system, so that I can get the vocal the excitation part, okay. I would like to invert that part. So invertible system means distinct inputs, if they result in distinct output, system is called a stable system, invertible system, okay. Okay, another attribute of the system that is of our interest is linearity. And this is the class in which we will be interested more, and I am going to dwell further on this. The point is, as I told you, I discussed two signal classes. One is that finite energy signal class, I mean continuous time finite energy signal class, and I considered the discrete time counterpart of that, okay. Both the classes were closed under simple addition. If I define my addition like this, suppose f plus g are two maps, t is the continuous variable, then this is nothing but ft plus gt for all t. Then I define a map alpha times f, where alpha is any complex number evaluated at time t is nothing but alpha times f of t for all t, then immediately we can see that signal classes of our interest, they are closed under these two operations. This is naturally the vector addition and this is the corresponding scalar multiplication. So, the spaces that we are talking about, or the sets of signals that we are talking about, are actually vector spaces. Further, on those vector spaces we also have inner product defined, and if I consider L2R, it is well known that the inner product defined there is this. And when I am considering those by infinite sequences, then I can say that inner product defined between two sequences x and y is nothing but x of n, y n bar, n going from minus infinity to infinity, here also t going from minus infinity to infinity plus infinity. That means the spaces that we are considering are actually inner product spaces, and you know that they are actually Hilbert spaces. Okay. So, when we are considering vector spaces, naturally we would like to talk about the operators on these spaces. So, linear operation is actually a natural thing to follow, and any system. So, the R which is defined as an operator from signal space to signal space, if this R is a linear operator, we say R is a linear system. That is, R has to satisfy linearity property. Basically, I am saying that A1 S1 plus A2 S2 is equal to A1 R of S1 plus A2 R of S2 for all A1 A2 belonging to C, or K if I call my field to be K, and all S1 S2 belonging to the signal space of my interest. Okay. So, if the system R satisfies this linearity constraint, then I say that my system is a linear system. Okay. So, this is another system attribute of our interest. Two more system attributes that will be of interest to us. Let me quickly discuss those two system attributes also, namely time invariance and incremental linearity. Time invariance, okay, and one more property that I will talk about is incremental linearity. If you remember, I just gave you a system, a particular class of system, namely the translation system or a delay system. Okay. Delay system delays the signal by an amount t0, where t0 can be arbitrarily chosen. Okay. So, if the system operator commutes with the delay operator, then we say that system is a time invariant system. So, mathematically I will put it down like this, that suppose t0 dot x is what I am denoting, x is a mapping, and t0 dot x means x delayed by an amount t0. So, I am defining this map t0 dot x evaluated at t to be x of t minus t0. If I denote this map, the delayed map, as t0 dot x, then I can say the following thing, that R operating on t0 dot x, if this is equal to t0 dot rx, that is basically what is happening is, what I do is I consider delayed input to the system. t0 dot x means I have taken x, I have delayed x by an amount t0, and then I am passing through the system. And if this is same thing as this side, that is I take x, pass it through the system and delay the response. If these two are same, then I say that my system is time invariant, that is the system operator commutes with the translation operator. In the block diagram fashion, I can say the following. Suppose I denote my delay system to be RT0 and system operator to be R, Okay. Then I say whether, and this is my input xt, this is the output yt. So whether I put RT0 first and R later, or I take R first and the delay system later, the effect is the same. Here I am taking xt, I am delaying xt by an amount t0 and passing through the system, and here I am taking xt, passing through the system and delaying the response. If this happens, then system is a time invariant system. Okay, I will come back and discuss this once again. Before, let me quickly go through the incrementally linear system and wind up the discussion here. Okay. There are so many systems which look like linear system, but unfortunately in our definition of linearity they do not fit in, and in order to accommodate those signals we define another class of systems called incrementally linear systems. Okay. So let us see the following thing: yt is equal to xt plus a constant c. This system looks like a linear system, but it is not if I go and use my definition, because x1t has a response y1t, x2t has a response y2t, then x1 plus x2 will not have the response which is y1 plus y2 because of this constant factor c. And in order to tackle this problem, what I say is the following: a system is called incrementally linear system if it satisfies two properties. Number one, if I take y2t minus y1t, where y2 is the response of the system to x2t, y1t is the response of the system to x1t. If I consider the difference should be a function of x2 minus x1. This is number one. I should be able to write y2t minus y1t as some function of x2 minus x1, and secondly, this function R curl should be a linear system. So a system is called incrementally linear system if it satisfies these two properties. I will dwell on linear time invariant systems in more detail later, wind up the discussion here.